Don't forget, you can support the Sean Starr Show by supporting our sponsors like Silver Paw Dog, silverpawdog.com. It's their everything pet warehouse sale event, up to 80% off jackets, collars, raincoats, sweaters, treats and toys, beds and supplements. 3237 Boulevard des Sources. So that's Gallery des Sources. It's their everything pet warehouse sale event, May 2nd to May 4th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Click the link in the pinned comment of this video for your chance to win $200 to spend at Silver Paw Dog.
Yeah, so if we all remember all the multitude of conditions that Kent Hughes and well, at the time, Calgary Flames general manager, no longer there, now with Toronto Maple Leafs, Brad Treliving, did for us all. It was one heck of a headache. But thankfully, we're closer to the finish line now, and there's a little bit more clarity on the options. So here's how it goes. If the Calgary Flames if their pick were to fall in the bottom 10, then the Canadiens would get the Florida Panthers first round pick, which the Flames acquired in the Matthew Tkachuk trade from a couple of years back. On the flip side, and this is the other situation, if they don't finish in the bottom 10, then the Canadiens get Calgary's pick no matter where it lands. Right as we have this conversation, it's very likely and it's projected that it will stay 16th overall, which is the last pick of the teams that don't make the playoffs. So the Canadiens would basically have their pick, which at this point will be 17th or higher, depending on what happens in the playoffs. And then you'll have Calgary's pick, which will be literally one right before. And so the reason why this is a benefit is because it's still not said and done. There is still the draft lottery. There's still about a 3%, 4% chance that they win the draft lottery, and that could vault them from 16th to 6th overall if they were to win the draft lottery. However, no team has ever won the draft lottery beyond the 14th overall pick, so I wouldn't lose sleep over it. So to that degree, no. But what you need to know is because the Calgary Flames did not make the playoffs, they automatically get the best pick, like the highest pick of the teams that didn't make the playoffs, just because the West was so competitive this year. And if the top 16 teams in the standings made the playoffs, the Flames would have made the playoffs and the Canadiens maybe would not. And so like that changes everything. But because of the divisional breakdown of it, they get the worst pick. The Canadiens will start with the worst pick of the teams that made the playoffs, and the Flames will have the highest pick of the teams that did not. And so that may give the Canadiens 17th and 16th overall picks going into the 2025 draft. And I wouldn't be surprised if one, if not both, of those picks would be up for trade.
Well, that's the obvious follow-up. So it's a two-pronged question, right? So it's the likeliness that Montreal uses one or both of those picks in a leverage situation to enhance a possible transaction this summer. And the first prong of the question is, when we look at this draft, what's the word on the street for how deep, where does it kind of fall off? In previous drafts, we hear, it's the top 7, can't miss. After that, a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more risky. So why don't you tackle the likeliness the Canadiens use both picks, one of the two anyways, this summer? And then the second part of it all is, how deep is the 2025 NHL draft?
I had a scout tell me that they wouldn't pick anyone in this draft over Ivan Demidov. Just to give you an idea, Ivan Demidov went 5th.
Right.
Yeah, there's no player on Celebrini's level at this point. We have Michael Misa, who is lights out for the Saginaw Spirit again this year. He's a former exceptional player in the OHL. Yep. And then Matthew Schaefer, who unfortunately got injured at the World Junior Championships, looks and projects to be, I wouldn't say a Cale Makar level defenseman, but that same style. He may be a perennial number 1 defenseman. I don't know about like a perennial Norris Trophy defenseman, but a solid, number 1 that you can count on in the same realm as a Miro Heiskanen, for example, with the Dallas Stars. Wow. So, which is still fantastic, but it's not like it. We're not talking about generational talent or like franchise altering talent. Like, this is a guy in Schaefer and Misa that you could tack to, like, for example, you're the Chicago Blackhawks, you'd love to add a guy like Michael Misa who could be the centerman and allow you to move a guy like Connor Bedard to the wing, and those two would just run roughshod over the league. I don't think he would be their best player because there's a guy like Connor Bedard. Same thing, if you have a team like the San Jose Sharks that would pick first overall, they'd probably go for a guy like Schaefer because they're already set down the middle, and they would need that last piece on defense, and then boom, they have the core that they can build around and be competitive for the next decade. So those are the guys at the top. But then where does it drop off, as you say? Well, there's about 5 or 6 guys that I would say are in the first tier. There is no top tier. So view it as the second tier from last year's draft. There's about 6 players there. And then from pick 7 to about 13, there's another tier, I would say, and that may push itself to 15 or 16 as we continue to see players surpass themselves in the playoffs or the U18s or the World Championships, you name it. And then after that, there's a bigger drop off from 20 and on that we've seen in past years. So I don't think you're going to find of the value of a Zeev Buyam or a Dickinson, or even a Hellenius in the teens like you did last year. But there is opportunity and there is potential for guys to fall, such as guys like Carter Bear, for example, who injured his Achilles and is out for the season. Some teams may be a little concerned. Guys like Roger McQueen, who spent a good chunk of the season out because of a back injury, may slide in accordance to that, but he's been playing much better now. There's always possibilities. But the thing is, the Canadiens, it takes one team to fall in love with a player to the point where they're willing to use that pick in the center of a trade for something special. And I think that's what you'd be looking for. And if you have 2, it doesn't stop the Canadiens from holding on to 1 and drafting a player they like. There are tons of players that are available in that spot that could be, I wouldn't call a middle of the lineup player. I think there's potential for top 6 talent in that ring, but you wouldn't normally get a top line player.
Nice to see Zeev Buyam making his NHL debut against the Ducks on Tuesday. Looks like the Minnesota Wild are going to be a problem. How do you feel about teams trading away first-round picks? Like when I'm listening to you talk about maybe use one, maybe trade both, maybe trade one. There's part of me, it's like, man, I would be so reluctant to ever trade a first-round pick. Like when Calgary did it, I'd be so reluctant, man. I know it's hindsight. I know it's Monday morning quarterback, but. I don't know, man. I don't like
trading a first-round pick that far out is dangerous.
Yes, always. Crazy. Yeah. What about the rumors there? Like we were speculating, like Chicago. Here's my unprotected 2026 pick. Like no one thought Chicago was going to be any good this year, but they were willing to roll the dice on an unprotected 2026 pick for who?
I talked to and for Ivan Demidov.
Exactly.
But it's because the feeling around the league already at that point was that this year's draft was not on last year's level.
Right.
And a lot of people felt that Ivan Demidov was the second best talent in that draft without question. And the only reason he fell was because of politics and his ethnicity and where he played and his contract status. And some other teams, organizational needs. But at the end of the day, this is why team like Chicago was so willing to give their unprotected first. This is why the Philadelphia Flyers were so aggressive and even offered their unprotected first. Like it makes a ton of sense because you saw teams, with no real worry send away their 2025 firsts almost a year, if not more in advance. And so I'm not saying this draft is a crapshoot. I think that there's, similar to 2022, it's not the best year to pick first overall, but it's a good year to pick, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Let me ask you this. Is there a team that you can identify today that maybe has an asset or two that is attractive, that would also be attracted to the Canadiens' 2 first-round picks this summer? That maybe there's a discussion to be had to test the waters in this situation I've created for Marco to answer here. Is there a team that comes to mind?
That's so tough at this junction just because you don't necessarily know who's going to want to blow it up closer to the draft or who's going to value a future or who's going to value a certain player. I don't think
Pittsburgh comes to mind too, right?
Yeah, but Pittsburgh is what
are they going to do?
I say this, and please don't say Crosby. But I say this.
Say anything.
I know, but I'm warning you now. No Crosby.
I didn't say anything.
but like I feel like trying to pluck a player out of Pittsburgh is like just not like there's nobody there
I know.
that realistically would make sense. Don't throw Malkin at me, it's not happening. Don't throw Crosby at me, it's not happening. So if that's not happening, then there's no real point of offering a pick of that quality. You
Yeah.
have to look at teams that maybe retooling or maybe looking to shed salary or maybe are looking to get younger. Like that's the kind of situation you'd be looking for. Like, what if the Nashville Predators were looking to trade a guy like, I don't know, Ryan O'Reilly?
Dun,
Would you
dun,
be
dun.
willing to throw? Would you be willing to throw a first round pick at that?
I mean, the guy wins he wins 65% of his faceoffs. Kind of slow, but wins a lot of faceoffs, bro.
It's exactly it. So, what kind of style are you playing with, right? Like, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And the same could be said with the East, right? Like, you look at the Detroit Red Wings. Are they gonna, with Marco Casper playing so well, are they gonna trade one of their centers? Same thing with the you look at the Islanders. They just got rid of one center in Nelson. They're probably going to be on the market for another, so they're off the beat. Buffalo Sabres just traded Cousins. They're probably not going to be trading another center.
Yeah.
But if Logan Thompson became available, you bet your bottom dollar that almost every young asset available would be thrown at Buffalo to try to make that pick.
Bro, you drop the Islanders are another. What they're going to do? Matthew Barzal's always heard. Like, what the Islanders are so fascinating.
But is Matthew Barzal like it's so? This is the thing that I've been told. Lula Moriello, as long as he's general manager of that team, is not rebuilding them. And the only reason he accepted a trade of that magnitude, trading Brock Nelson, was because he expects Cal Ritchie to be in their lineup next season, along with that first round pick that they can use to trade to add to their roster. They are not retooling, and the only way I see them walking away from Noah Dobson is if those two parties cannot come together for a contract. So you look at teams that potentially could have centers available or make centers available. There's only one that really comes to mind for me, and that's going to be the Seattle Kraken.
That's it.
It always comes back to
you've been on this for more than a month, though. You've been on the Kraken for more than a month.
It's the team that is really sitting with an overabundance that just took on multiple first round picks for guys like Bjorkstrand and Gord. This is a team that could be intrigued by immediate futures as well to help them build out their prospect pool. There's a couple of pretty good defensemen that they should be looking at in that regard that realm. So if an Aitchison or Mertka is available, there's a good glut of them that are going to be top 4 bona fide players. They may be interested as well. And then, you may be able to take a pick at some of their centers. But again, there's going to be a lot of movement. There's going to be a lot of movement this summer in terms of the flexibility the teams have and just the availability of true blue second line centers. So it really is going to be a question of fit.
And we'll be here. Marco and I will be here to break it all down and cover it all.
But again, I do want to recap this.
What?
The acquisition of Sean Monahan netted the Canadiens in the end a 26th overall pick.
Yeah.
Which then was traded along with a late second and a 7th rounder for the 21st overall pick, which became Michael Hage.
Yeah.
And the 16th overall pick in the 2025 draft.
Crazy. And it's funny you bring that up because I was reading late last week the trade tree that got Lane Hutson to the Canadiens began with Thomas Plekanec getting moved to Toronto. That is the beginning. That is the beginning of the Lane Hutson trade tree. Yep. It began with Plekanec getting dealt to Toronto, which ultimately ends up with
brought back Rinat Valiev, and Rinat Valiev went to Calgary.
And then I think there was the Kulak deal with Edmonton.
So they acquired Kulak, and then they traded Kulak for a second-round pick, which was 62nd overall in 2022. Lane Hutson.
That is Marco D'Amico. I'm Sean Starr. You can follow Marco D'Amico on all your favorite socials at MN D'Amico. Marco, excited for what's to come and the push towards the playoffs. Unbelievable as always. Congratulations on the Ivan Demidov story, and let's keep pushing forward. It's going to be an exciting spring into the summer. Thanks as always, Marco.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a good one.